What's a fact that sounds like a conspiracy theory? Ernest Hemingway suffered from ongoing paranoia that the FBI were surveilling him, which was thought to be a key factor in his suicide. Most chalked it up to mental illness at the time. Decades later, his file was released, proving he was under investigation for his ties to Cuba. His phones were tapped, and he was right all along. Tax service companies such as Intuit spend millions of dollars a year lobbying to make sure the IRS does not make it easier to file your taxes. JFK's brain was removed during autopsy and stored in an archive. Its current whereabouts are unknown. Diamond company De Beers sits on an estimated 50 years' worth of yearly carats sold in jewel-quality stones, purely to keep the market price high by creating artificial scarcity. Precious stones are, in fact, not so rare as to merit the high prices they command. Everyone, even from Roman times, knew asbestos was bad for your health. Same with lead. There are no old lead miners. Project Sunshine, in which the U.S. government, in the wake of dropping atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, ordered a major study to better understand the effects of radiation exposure/nuclear fallout on the human body, so an international network of agents was recruited to locate recently deceased children and steal body parts from them to use for testing. There's a psychological reaction called the backfire effect, which essentially means that people, after they're given proof that what they think they know is absolutely wrong, will believe their misconception/misinformation even more deeply. There was one recorded homicide in New York City on September 11, 2001. The people who died because of the attacks weren't considered part of the homicides for that day, because a very high number like that is a statistical outlier that would throw off accurate record numbers. The one person who was murdered was a Polish immigrant named Henryk Siwiak, who was nowhere near the attacks. He was killed in the Bedford-Stuyvesant area of Brooklyn at around 11:40 p.m. In 2/3 of all U.S. states, EMS is not considered an essential service. As such, it receives next to zero gov funding or support. The Pentagon has never been able to account for more than half its budget. In the 60s and 70s, thousands of Native American women were sterilized without their consent as part of a practice to sterilize poor and minority women to help their financial situation and their families' quality of life by preventing unwanted pregnancies in poor communities. Some were not informed at all and had it done to them completely without their knowledge. Others were threatened with having their health care taken away if they did not agree to have it done to them. Some studies estimate that as many as 25 to 50% of Native American women were sterilized in the 1970s, representing tens of thousands of victims. This is essentially a modern-day genocide in the United States. The UK government secretly tested biological weapons on its own coastal towns to see how far they could make it inland. The sugar industry paid nutrition researchers to blame fats for health problems that were often correlated to sugar consumption. From this, we have all the nonsense about good fats/bad fats, etc. That corporations openly bribe politicians to get what they want, they call it lobbying to get away with it. The Pentagon has an insane number of bathrooms because as they were building it, the segregation of bathrooms ended. How big tobacco companies denied the health risks of smoking, despite internal knowledge of the dangers. GM, IBM, and Ford played a major role in rearming Germany in the 1930s. George Bush's grandfather, Senator Prescott Bush, was a director and shareholder of companies that profited from their involvement with the financial backers of the German forces. The time it takes the moon to orbit the Earth is approximately the same as it takes it to rotate around its axis, which results in always the same side of the moon being visible to Earth. We never see the dark side of the moon. 100% fact, but I'm guessing the flat earthers are loving it, added quotes around dark. The U.S. government did biological warfare testing on the public in San Francisco. Bioweapon testing in San Francisco. 15 out of the 19 hijackers on September 11 were Saudis. The U.S. authorities shut down a lot of evidence to the families affected. The court cases are ongoing. CIA sold weapons to Iran to finance far-right rebel/terror group in Nicaragua. Oil, rubber, and car companies influenced government agencies to pull funding from public transit and focus more on policies favoring the use of private vehicles. That's why public transit is poor in so many places in the U.S. that had far more robust transit systems in the first half of the 20th century. White flight and redlining also contributed to this, drastically increasing the size of unwalkable suburban areas and languishing cities. The quinoa craze in America had devastating effects on Bolivia. Bolivian farmers switched to growing quinoa to export to the U.S. because it was much more profitable than other staple foods. As a result, along with various other factors, Bolivia has really poor food security for its own people. Big Bird and Walter Cronkite were both considered to be a part of the Challenger expedition, the one that blew up. The U.S. systematically destabilized many countries in South America. Humans used to visit the moon, then we just stopped. A cartel run out of Switzerland got all the top light bulb manufacturers to limit bulb life to 1,000 hours so that they could sell more. Phoebus Cartel. That PR and advertising firms are actively engaging in psychological warfare to push certain viewpoints and values in both implicit and explicit ways. If you control a person's thoughts, emotions, and reactions, then you can begin to control their behavior in almost any sphere of life.